Kia ora, I'm Chelsea Daniels, and this is The Front Page, a daily podcast presented by the New Zealand Herald. From takeovers and sales to mergers and disputes, 2026 is lining up to be quite the year for the media world. We might just start seeing some of the biggest changes in New Zealand media ownership in decades. Well, that's according to the Herald's media insider, Shayne Currie. Last year, Currie predicted that at least one major media platform would close, a very high-profile TV broadcaster would leave their position, and that an interesting new shareholder would emerge at NZME. All became true. But what has he foreseen as he peers into his crystal ball ahead of this year? He joins us now on the front page to talk everything ratings, advertising, broadcasting, and who will come out on top come election time. First off, Shayne, let's take a look at your 2025 predictions. You actually got a fair few right, eh?
I did.
You know what you're talking about.
Well, I surprised myself a little bit in terms of just some of the predictions. I thought I'd get about a quarter of them right, because a lot of them were out there in terms of some of the ownership predictions and so forth. But as it turned out, almost up to 80% correct, which I was chuffed about, and made the point that slightly better than Scott Robertson's All Black record. But no, I certainly, it was a year of big change, and we've seen that in the media industry, of course, over the last 5 years, particularly since COVID. It's disrupted the business models, that and, a number of other global factors as well. And so last year, I think we saw a little bit of consolidation, certainly some ownership changes, but as I've said, for the year ahead, I expect that to accelerate.
Yeah, and in terms of that, what are your predictions in terms of that shuffle or musical chairs? Yeah,
we've got a big year ahead, obviously, on a number of fronts. The election will be a framework for not just, potential new policies and what we might see in the media sector, but the way that the media companies themselves are covering the election. We'll see a lot of new talent, a lot of new platforms that emerge early in the year. And so that's going to be interesting to see how they perform, and particularly as we build up to an election later in the year. But the other big factor is the improving economy. And I suspect that will absolutely help the media companies in terms of their outlook, their confidence and investment, and just what they do tackle in the next 6 months to 12 months. And I think we'll see a lot more confidence, Chelsea, in the way that they collaborate with each other, but also around ownership changes. And in my predictions for the year ahead, I've said just about all of the big 6 media companies are ripe for potential takeover or new owners or new shareholders. And that, we can go through some of those, absolutely. But I think they're all ripe, as I say, for acquisition.
Which is the ripest?
I think we'll see Sky TV actually. A lot of analysts and media commentators such as myself, we do see Sky TV as being undervalued. It's obviously had a big 12 months with the acquisition of TV3 from Warner Brothers Discovery. They acquired that mid-2025 for $1 in a debt-free deal. And so Sky, in the next few months, you'll see them moving towards having that company now. They've brought together 2, big media businesses. And so I suspect we'll see a lot of operational change there in the next few months and a lot of investor interest. It's publicly listed at the moment on the NZX, but lots of rumours that were coming to the fore in 2025 that private equity would be interested, potential new deals, potential new investments coming together in the background. Nothing, of course, has firmed up as of yet, but I do suspect that Sky TV will be top of the list for a lot of potential new investors. The one at the other end of the equation, but equally ripe, is TVNZ. Now, the national government has said no asset sales this term, but as we get closer to the election, we may well see the National Party take it to the electorate and say, asset sales for us is a policy item, an agenda item for the next 3 years. And I suspect if that happens, that TVNZ will absolutely be amongst some of the contenders. And there are a number of frameworks that could exist for future way that TVNZ is owned. One option is the Air New Zealand model, which of course at the moment is just over 50% government owned, but also publicly listed. And so TVNZ could either be falling under that model, or we might see some private ownership come into that company.
Yeah, and of course, investors into New Zealand media companies, that did happen last year as well. Between Jim Grennan's potential NZME bid this year, you reckon, and Trade Me's interest in Stuff Digital. Out of the two, what do you see unfolding first?
Yeah, I'm probably a little less confident in those predictions. That so Jim Grennan at the moment owns 18.5% of NZME, and of course that hit the headlines big time this time last year. And so he's slowly acquired more and more shares. Now, if he wants to go over the 20% threshold, that then invokes a lot of the takeovers panel and takeovers code requirements. So there's a few more hurdles there in terms of taking potential future acquisitions to other shareholders of NZME. So that is potential. I've got, from what I know of Jim Grennan, he obviously owns our company, so it's been a very interesting way period of observing just what's unfolded in the last 12 months here. I've got no inside knowledge in terms of whether or not he will want to go over that 20%. But what I do know of him, he's obviously very clear about his intentions with media. He's been very vocal with shareholders last year in terms of the desire he wants to see in terms of improvement in the performance of NZME. So I don't think he's sitting still. I don't think the board of NZME is sitting still. They've made very public statements about where they see the business heading, and the operating EBITDA is forecast to be higher than originally expected. So there's been improvements in the financial performance there already. So both NZME and then on Stuff Digital, which of course was acquired, 50% of Stuff Digital was acquired by Trade Me, again mid-year last year. And so the potential there is that another investor comes in. Sinead Boucher may well be considering her future options, whether she keeps her 50% stake or whether Trade Me does, take the whole business. That will come down to its own private equity owners. Still a lot of discussion points. As I say, slightly less confident on those two in terms of where I see Sky TV, TVNZ, and MediaWorks is the other big one, Chelsea, where
I was going to say, a big shout. And when I saw that in your list, so a MediaWorks radio station sale to an Australian radio operator, it's one of those things that I wouldn't have thought straight off the bat off the radar. But when you see it written down and you have a little think about it, it's got potential.
Absolutely. So MediaWorks has split into two companies now in New Zealand. We've got QMS, which is the outdoor advertising company, and they won the big contract for Auckland Transport last year. So they're riding a high. And then the radio stations have been retained under the MediaWorks brand. Now, both of those companies, both QMS and MediaWorks, are most definitely on the block. Anything's for sale at the right price, of course, but those two, their owners are in the market in Australasia and probably further afield looking for owners. And so I do suspect that there will be manoeuvres, particularly for QMS, the outdoor advertising company, in this market in the next few months. And Nine Australia, the big media company that once owned Stuff, is certainly looking very closely at QMS from what I understand.
We're never going to run the organisation focused on getting one of our services or one of our platforms or one of our radio stations to a certain number as an end in itself. So for me, the focus is more on delivering our charter and being different and playing our unique role in the market. Now, audience engagement and relevance is one measure of how you're going, and obviously we've got some work to do there. But we do need to keep faith with the fact that we're a public media organisation. Our job is around reliable, comprehensive news, making sure we're representing all of Aotearoa's cultures and perspectives and delivering to that kind of sense of national identity and cohesion.
So RNZ operational performance hit the headlines late last year. Salaries soared apparently, and the broadcaster admitted further savings will need to be made. You reckon they'll cop intense scrutiny from the Treasury and government over the way it's been managing the taxpayer-funded budget. What could this entail?
Yeah, they most certainly are under more scrutiny, and that's become clear in documents that were released under the Official Information Act late last year, in which Treasury has urged the minister ministers, the shareholding ministers, to make sure that the board of RNZ is holding the executive to account. Of course, RNZ received a funding boost under the previous Labor government, and what we saw last year was the National-led coalition pull some of that funding budget back by almost $5 million a year. And so what that has meant is RNZ had to go back to its books, introduce a little more discipline in the coming 4 years, on its own operational budget, and Treasury and other government departments want to make sure that RNZ is on track for that. We'll see a really interesting change mid-year this year with RNZ, and that the board will almost be cleaned out and will have the National Coalition basically have all of its appointees in place. And that's because the tenures for the chair, Jim Mather, and two of the leading directors come up for renewal, and they've been there for 2 or 3 terms. And so it's not normal that they would continue on after that kind of period. And so we'll see probably 3 new directors and including a new chair coming on board. I suspect the new chair will be Brent Impey, who is currently on the board as a director. He was appointed a couple of years ago. And he has a very strong commercial radio background and a very strong business background. And I suspect we'll see a change in direction, if you like, for RNZ. A lot more, I guess, that will come to the fore after June.
Well, speaking of RNZ, a major battle to look out for this year. Obviously, we've got the election, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the kings of breakfast. Mike Hosking on ZB. You've now got John Campbell on RNZ. How do you think ratings are going? Because Mike dominates the mornings, right? You see those surveys, number one, time and time again. How much of that can John take away, really?
Oh, that's a fascinating question, and it really will be. As you get into the weeds of what is unfolding in New Zealand media in the next 12 months, the ratings battle for radio at breakfast time is a big one. You're right to ask that question. News Talk ZB has a very, what I would say, rusted-on audience who are intensely loyal to Mike Hosking and the talent throughout the day. We see it, across 24 hours, essentially. RNZ has had its own struggles in the audio space, but will be confident and optimistic that the upticks that it's seen in the recent 2 surveys will continue, especially with John Campbell coming on board. I don't think necessarily that RNZ, with John Campbell as the new co-host at Morning Report, will steal too much audience away from News Talk ZB, but what we might see is a further uptick for RNZ in terms of audiences who might have been there previously but and are curious about how John performs, especially in election year. He'll be under as much scrutiny from media commentators as some of the politicians are in terms of election year. Overall, Chelsea, I think both ZB and RNZ will see a ratings boost as a result of this being a very newsy year. There will be a lot of interest in the election, especially closer to the end of the year. What will be equally interesting is just which politicians choose to go to RNZ and or News Talk ZB, because we've been starting to see in recent years decisions being led by some of their teams that they won't appear on certain shows, which I think is a real shame. I think I think if you're a politician from any side of the political divide, you should be fronting up on as many shows as possible. And of course, with the podcast now coming to the fore, that's an equal opportunity for them as well to front up. I think any functioning democracy needs the politicians to be answering the hard questions and not just choosing sort of the shows that they think they might get an easier ride. And I think it works for the politicians as well. Some of the people they're talking to, they'll be locked-in voters. The voters they really want to pick up are the undecideds, and they'll be listening to a range of platforms and watching a range of shows. So hopefully we might see some sort of, some more kind of fronting up, one-to-one debates on different shows.
And in terms of breakfast as well, it's not only earlobes that are in contention, but eyeballs, I suppose, to use the weirdest analogy I could think of. So we're getting ready for a full new whole year with Herald now, Ryan Bridge on the Herald, which you reckon will confirm a deal with Sky to screen on 3 Now, potentially. And then that'll gear up nicely because we've got a battle out with the new TVNZ breakfast host, Tova O'Brien.
That's right.
Which I think is an amazing pick, especially leading into an election year.
That's right. And again, you're right. I think that battle will play out on digital as much as the traditional channels. Of course, Herald now is a digital proposition. And so TVNZ recognising, I guess, that we are in a big election year. Masterful move by getting Tova O'Brien in as the new breakfast co-host. So she will bring a new edge to that show for sure. And she's up against an equally, Ryan Bridge, a great interviewer as well. So that's a fascinating battle. But again, it might not just be a battle between 7 and 9 a.m. each morning. I think where the different audiences come in is through social media, the way that those shows are sliced and diced for, in the case of Herald now, nzherald.co.nz, and in the case of Breakfast for onenews.co and for TVNZ Plus. So it's how they amplify that content and those interviews that will be equally as important for them in terms of the ratings battle. But, audiences are sport for choice. It's a great sign that the media companies are investing in new initiatives, that we're seeing the talent moving around, and it's actually exciting that in an election year that we're starting to see some manoeuvres like this, because we hadn't seen it for up until sort of late last year. So it's really encouraging, and it's good to be reporting on some of these things rather than the cutbacks that we saw sort of in 2023, early 24.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, actually. Will I still have a job within the next 12 months?
Well, I think we'll still see tight cost controls, but I think there'll be new platforms. And the front page is a classic kind of example of new platforms that have come on board to address audience needs and demands. And so I think that's really exciting. I think we're probably at a level now for most of the major media companies where they'll be happy with their operational cost base. There's a bit of work to be done with Sky having taken on board TV3, but we shouldn't be naive that there won't still be, cuts and that sort of thing. That's part of the nature of the industry that we're in, of course. But I'm absolutely, as we start 2026, a lot more optimistic about the future of media than, say, what was unfolding in 2024, 2023.
Yeah, so I'll be positive for now, but I won't put a new car on a payment plan, hey?
I do think our acquisition of Discovery New Zealand is an exciting opportunity for us to really celebrate creative storytelling, to think about how we can collaborate on the costs that are kind of behind the scenes in terms of broadcast and hub and resources, and creating pathways for young people to have roles in creating stories, super important. So I would hope that all of the companies that are here now are here in 5 years. We want to play our part.
So you've spoken to 6 media CEOs. You've asked them the same questions and their predictions for the year ahead. Were there any similarities, and what were the major differences?
Yeah, great question. All 6 of them, and I was thankful for them for taking the time to answer the 6 questions. They're very upbeat and optimistic, so you would expect that. You wouldn't expect them to be coming out all doom and gloom and pessimistic. So, but they're not Pollyanna-ish. They know that there are big challenges that they're all confronting. They actually each have unique challenges. TVNZ, for example, is embarking this year on its biggest change in its business model in decades, and that it will be introducing pay television, and we'll see that through subscriptions to the Football World Cup, which it has the rights to from June. So it has a whole lot of new digital technology that's coming on board. And so it will be competing much more strongly with Sky for sporting rights in the future. And I expect them and Sky will be competing hardcore for the Rugby World Cup rights in the future, and that will start this year. With Sky and 3, I've already mentioned that, they've got a challenge in terms of bringing together now 2 media businesses and making sure that they're match fit for the next 12 months. For NZME, which owns beyond just the Herald and News Talk ZB, it's got a One Roof property portal. They've announced a new boss of One Roof just before we started recording this podcast today, Chelsea, and that's James McAvoy. He's got a strong, not the actor.
I did think that when the email came through, got a bit excited.
But he's got a very strong background in a lot of digital startups and including TradeMe. So, NZME sees a lot of value and potential growth in One Roof and where that's heading in terms of the real estate listings. Then you've got QMS and MediaWorks, and we've talked about just the growth potential there for the outdoor advertising business. It's a really interesting sector of media at the moment with the advent of digital billboards. There's a lot of revenue growth, admittedly off a small base, coming into that sector. And then in the advertising industry generally, the agencies, it's a watch out, but the independent agencies are really starting to make some inroads and gathering some big accounts. So I think we'll see a lot of change in that area as well. And for instance, as we record today, the likes of Westpac, the Warehouse Group, ANZ, all of these accounts are up for grabs in the early half of 2026. And so these are all very lucrative accounts that have traditionally been held by big agencies owned by global conglomerates. But I think we'll start seeing some of the New Zealand-owned independent agencies start to make some good inroads there.
Yeah, and I love the independent agencies as well because I see a lot of them on my drive to work and they're so different. So there's, billboards with vines or something on them and they're really visual and 3D and they make them really cool. So I think that's a major note. Like I've noticed the shift in the advertising billboard space over the last couple of years, say.
Yeah, I think that creativity that we've obviously seen on traditional channels through television, print, radio, that's now starting to evolve much more strongly in digital, and the creative agencies, they've been impacted hard in the last few years, but that creativity that Kiwis are renowned for is absolutely still present. And, with AI, we haven't talked about AI yet, but AI is a major factor. It came through very strongly in our CEO's questions. I think there's a huge opportunity for media companies to not only use AI, but to explain it to audiences, to clearly kind of outline the benefits of it, the challenges of it. But I also see a major opportunity for media companies to promote the human side of things that, we're not providing AI slop here. So at my social media channels at the moment, it's become up to the point now where I don't know what's real and what's fake. Whereas I think the media companies have an opportunity now to differentiate themselves from some of those social media sites and say, hey, this is authentic, real journalism. It's been fact-checked. And so I think we'll start seeing a move back to, this is my optimistic view, that we'll start seeing a move back to some of those platforms that audiences can trust. It's really important that the media companies are staying focused on building trust levels to help a functioning democracy, especially in an election year.
Yeah, and being incredibly transparent about the use of AI.
Totally.
Totally.
I mean, it's an amazing tool. I mean, I use it every day in terms of helping me with, from the very basic. We've had AI for a long time in the newsroom, helping us with grammar and spell check and helping write headlines and that sort of thing. But you're right. Being absolutely clear, as we are on our website, just about where we are using it and where it's a no-go zone.
And in terms of your predictions for this year, I'll finally ask you, what is the wackiest prediction? What is one of them that you wrote down and you were like, delete it, no, bring it back, this is too wild?
Yeah, I think probably, a lot of them are probably fall into that, under that umbrella.
Are there any
in
that
a way.
didn't make the cut?
Oh, there are a lot. And I think, with media, it's never a dull day. It's a really exciting industry, despite all of the challenges that we face each day. I think probably, I think we'll still see a lot of talent change and a lot of people moving between companies and that sort of thing. So I think that's an exciting part of the industry as well. So yeah, I think watch the space in terms of the likes of some of the RNZ changes, TVNZ stuff. They've all, everyone's now converged, and so Chelsea, you've come from, that radio background, and look at you, you're performing a show, hosting a show now that goes out digitally. And so I think we'll see a lot more of that talent evolve across the industry more generally. But yeah, wackiest, wildest predictions. Well, who's to say? I do think it's not so much media, but someone said to me today, it is in a sort of media aligned, and someone said to me today or yesterday actually that they expect to see Winston Peters to be the Prime Minister by the end of the year. How's that for wacky?
How's that for wacky? That is.
And the reason being that he will hold the cards.
He could be kingmaker again.
And he could be the kingmaker, and he could then become the king for a set period under a coalition agreement.
Finally. Goodness me. Well, I'll hold you to that. I'm not putting any money down, though.
That's wacky. That is wacky, but it could happen.
Thanks for joining us, Shayne.
Thanks, Giles.
That's it for this episode of The Front Page. You can read more about today's stories and extensive news coverage at nzherald.co.nz. The Front Page is produced by Jane Yee and Richard Martin, who is also our editor. I'm Chelsea Daniels. Subscribe to The Front Page on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts, and tune in tomorrow for another look behind the headlines.